The very first day of the legislative session, this legislative session, public money funding private education got the red carpet treatment at the State House. First, it was name dropped by Governor Little in his State of the State address. But even hours before that, there was a whole hearing hosted by an Idaho think tank and featuring state dignitaries, out-of-state dignitaries, and local lawmakers to highlight why offering a tax credit for school tuition would be a great idea under the guise of making Idaho's school choice more accessible.
Wealthy families already have school choice. They, regardless of their address, regardless of what their public school is or isn't offering, they can afford to send their child to another option. Low-income families don't have that opportunity, and this bill will create that.
Well, it's a bill or an idea they tried to create and make into law many times, going back to 2019. And every time, opponents poked holes in the plan because of cost, a lack of accountability, and, oh yeah, this thing called the Blaine Amendment, public money funneled to private education, not allowed. However, as you heard, they're giving it a go again this session. And while that bill has yet to be revealed, the same people opposed to it are getting out ahead of it. From the average taxpayer to the Idaho Education Association. Then last week, a school superintendent spoke up, posting a 3-page letter to fellow Idahoans, he wrote. Fruitland School District Superintendent Stoney Winston laid out why a tax credit to pay for private school would not be a good idea for Idaho public education, or Idaho in general for that matter. From our constitutional obligation to fund a free and thorough public school system to the fact we are not doing that. Winston, who grew up in Cambridge, pointed out how Idaho already has school choice, just not everywhere. 19 of our 44 counties do not have a private school option. And he wrote, a school choice tax credit would only be siphoning tax dollars to subsidize private education in more populated places. Well, it's not school choice, but a funding mechanism, Winston and many others have called it, funding that is already in dire straits.
Biggest concern is public education is underfunded. We're currently underfunded with what we need to do. And the biggest place in which we're underfunded is special education. So private schools, homeschools, they don't have to take special education students. We do. Anyone that walks through our door, and we're glad to do it. We want to provide those services for students, but they come with special needs and special challenges. And a lot of those challenges comes with dollar signs.
Dollar signs followed by a lot of numbers. Winston estimates school districts across the state spend an average of 14 to 15% of their funds on special education. However, prior to this school year, Idaho's special ed budget was underfunded by $80 million. For Fruitland, that deficit was nearly $647,000.
So that's a third of our discretionary money that we had to pull out and use to make sure that we have the services for special education.
What are discretionary funds usually used for?
Curriculum. We don't have dedicated curriculum. In fact, the only thing that we get for curriculum this last year was, it was a grant opportunity and you had to compete for others and it could only go to one vendor. Right now, Fruitland needs math curriculum. They haven't had an updated math curriculum in a long time. Well, that's going to cost about a little over $300,000. If I didn't have to fund my special education at the rate that I do, then I'd have the money to do that. I don't currently. But now we're going to take tax dollars, and if you're saying that we're going to have $50 million in which is going to go to school choice, which really is a funding mechanism for public tax dollars going to private schools, then you're not addressing the $80 million deficit that we have in special education funding. If we're saying that we're going to be using tax dollars to fund any type of education, shouldn't we be fully funding public education first?
Not too many school administrators have spoken out against this idea of tax credits, ESAs, vouchers, whatever. Why did you want to?
I think it's important for the future of our education system in Idaho. One of the questions I keep on asking people is, what do you want public education to look like in 10 years from now? And today is going to be the deciding factor on what that is going to be.
Will subsidizing private education improve public education?
No. There's no possible way that's going to do that. That's like saying we should do this because we should have competition in schools. Well, one, education shouldn't be a competition. public educators come every day, and we're doing the job. We're, you know, kids is why we do this. I mean, we want to see students succeed. Giving money to private education isn't going to do that.
We may be wondering how Idaho's special education needs are underfunded by $80 million. Well, 40% of those costs are supposed to be covered by the feds, but that hasn't exactly happened. And the difference has not been made up by the state either. It was a gap of nearly $67 million in 2023. Last August, in a State Board of Ed meeting, State Superintendent Debbie Critchfield updated that number to that $80 million, saying local school districts are subsidizing special ed to the tune of $80 million. Because of the shortfall in Fruitland, Superintendent Winston told us they've had to cut budgets for band, for art classes, and athletics. They all have to go out and fundraise more. Next year, he says they may have to cut staff. He also told us right now Fruitland doesn't have a supplemental levy, but if special education costs keep rising, Winston says he may have to try to get one, which would, of course, increase property taxes in Fruitland. So his concern, as you heard, like a lot of others, why are we talking about setting aside tens of millions of dollars to pay for private schools when we're clearly not paying for the public education to which we are already obligated?